Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening. I'm playing a song by John. One moment, please, while I grab it.
When he stood upon the hill, did they understand? When he fed the multitude, did they understand? Was it they were too blind to see? Only he could set them free. Don't know how anyone could hate Jesus when all he did was show us how to love. Did they know that he would guide us, that he'd live right there inside us? Did they know what they were missing if they took the time to listen when he walked upon the sea? Did they understand? 'Cause those blind eyes just to see. Did they understand? Was it maybe they didn't like the things he would say, so they turned their back and then they'd walk away? Don't know how anyone could hate Jesus when all he did was show us how to love. Did they know that he would guide us, that he lived right there inside us? Did they know what they were missing if they took the time to listen when they put him on a cross? Did they understand? And they nailed his hands and feet. Did they understand? We didn't deserve this. There's not even one. This gift of love, God's only Son. I don't understand. I don't
That was a newer song by John Yoder that we've never played. It's about the crucifixion of Christ, and it was called Did They Understand? So we have a lot of topics tonight, and one of our hosts, John, cannot join us for the second half. But in the first half, we're going to try to tackle the firing of the police officer for Alton Sterling. There was no DA action in Baton Rouge regarding that. There was only one firing of a police officer and one suspension. On April 4th, 2018, it's the 50-year anniversary of the execution of MLK, or Assassination. And in the second half of the show, if we get to it, Dana Boente got fired this week. He resigned as U.S. Attorney. Initially, in last fall, he resigned as the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, and then he was promoted as one of the top 3 United States attorneys who have power to fire Robert Mueller, and he's directly under Deputy Director Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, who's in charge of the Mueller probe. So I'm not. There's 4 co-hosts on the line already. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but Trump signed an order in the late fall that altered the line of succession for U.S. attorneys if they fire or leave the department. And right now, the succession goes like this. Rod Rosenstein is the top deputy AG under Sessions, but Sessions had recused himself for that Mueller investigation because of his attitude towards Hillary and what he said in Congress. And then it goes to Dana Boente, who just recently resigned, supposedly. It's practically a verified rumor. And then there's a woman named Rachel Brand in that top group, too. So if that apple cart gets upset, there's going to be more commotion in this whole thing. And then I found a website called the Palmer Report that says that there was a confirmation this week by the special counsel that there's illegal donations were funneled into the National Rifle Association from Russian politician Alexei Torshin. And Mueller's team is probing the RNC to determine whether illegal foreign donations were made in exchange for a pro-Russian platform and whether that money was funneled to Trump's 2016 campaign. Also, the same article addresses Mike Pence had ties to the Russian Orthodox Church that he was trying to help recover because they had so many years of persecution, is in charge of the religious aspect of leadership in his own country. In other words, churches don't have autonomy there. And I'll get into that later if we have time. But in the meantime, I'm going to pull in John and Don, and then Ben and Albert. Hi, John and Don.
Hello.
Hi, James. Hey, John. Hey, everybody.
Hey.
And now, hi, Ben and Albert. Happy Easter to you all.
Happy
Easter.
Thank you. Blessed Resurrection Day.
Hey, hello.
So we have a lot of stuff to cover tonight because would you guys like to start with just briefly Alton Sterling? You know, that whole thing. You know, like it just irks me that these cops killed someone who was selling videos in front of a store, and then there was no DA action like in the Minneapolis case. Geronimo Yanez, who killed Philando Castillo in Minneapolis, he had a trial, but Baton Rouge didn't do anything, but the chief of police did fire one of the officers who killed Alton Sterling, and he put the other one on long-term suspension. So I just thought we should bring that up briefly, being that it's the 50th anniversary of MLK's death on April 4th, and how far has our country come since then?
This is Don. Hey, guys. We haven't come very far. What's happening is that we're a nation that's stuck in tradition. We're stuck in, the old way of doing things, and we like to keep it that way. That's why we continue to follow, in some instances, by the word, the Constitution. And we need to really think about reworking some of the wording in there because it is antiquated in some instances and needs to be updated. So once we take a look at that, it's going to take a constitutional convention which can destroy the Constitution. But basically we should take a look at that. Our president, your president, is probably going to do that if he continues in his term. I can see that in the third or fourth year, there are going to be constitutional questions that are brought up that will not be answerable by the legislative session branch and will have to be adjudicated in the Supreme Court, which now, of course, is conservative, if you will. It's kind of down in the middle of the road, but it's pretty conservative. So they'll be looking to change some things. So we can look for a big upheaval of democracy soon, and that's going to affect everyone. That's going to change the dynamics of not only social life, but the economy and everything that we hold as family values. So Alton Sterling is just a part of that. He'll go down in history as Alton Sterling, the video salesman who got shot, and that's about all we can talk about because it happens every day all over the country. I'm a member of our Washington Democratic Platform Committee, and one of the platforms that we're looking at is a increase in media coverage for the daily killings that go on in our basically in our inner cities. We don't have an inner city here in Reno, but for the most part, we're trying to lead the nation in this concept of possibly having more media coverage for our everyday killings.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if we had time for Stephon Clark yet, but Ben, do you want to comment on what he said about the Constitution?
Yeah, I guess I would just ask, what part is, in your opinion, outdated? What would you change? Oh, me personally, for the most part, I'm not the one asking for the Constitution, the convention. I'm kind of. I'm at a point because of my being a lobbyist. I know the limitations of what we can do with laws, with amending laws, things like that. We can solve a lot of our problems with just amending laws or getting out of the way, as your president would suggest. So, me personally, I'm a non-Second Amendment person, but even it has its place in the Constitution. There's really, everything else with voting and fair access to the government. Citizens United is the one thing, and again, that's an amendment. So we're looking at, it's kind of a constitutional, it's an amendment. But so that can be worked around. But for the most part, the Constitution itself doesn't bother me, except for that the implications of the Second Amendment, where I believe guns should be in the hands of the militia, and nobody's a militia person but the state troopers. So that's impossible, though. Okay, I'll let you finish that. But I wanted to comment on that.
Go for it.
No, well, you can comment on it because I'm pretty much, my concept of the Constitution, that it's a great set of documents. I haven't, what's needed. I'm here in Nevada. I just helped about 15 of us. We ratified the ERA. So that's something in addition in the Constitution to make women equal. So we need 2 more states. I may have to go out of state and campaign for that. Illinois is potentially one of the next states. But the addition of the ERA is something that I'd like to see, or if needed. I don't even know if it's needed, but we all know that the landowners were the only ones who were included in the Constitution. But other than that, the actual Constitution has virtually all the rights that a democracy should have. My complaint is that it's being torn up right in front of our eyes without much protest. It's being torn up, by your president. So that's something that I'm very concerned.
That's not exactly accurate because I don't know if you're supporting the movement of all these high school kids taking time out of class to go march to destroy the Constitution. The most important part of it was strength of the people. And what you said about only a militia having guns, that's not how the Second Amendment is. That's only the first part. The statement that you're talking about, it says a militia is key to
a free state, because that's the counterbalance to only government having the guns. But it also says the right of the people to bear arms. So that's a totally different statement.
I'll read. I have the Constitution up. Let me just read that. It's only one sentence. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
All right, two different statements right there. So back in the day when America was being started, basically everybody that could fight was the militia.
Right.
Now we have a general population, and some people exercise their Second Amendment, some don't. Some are anti. And then we have another faction of people, several factions of people who actually call themselves militia and train. But the right of the people to be a militia, if it ever came down to us being invaded, the United States would be the militia. If our military failed us, we would be it. Everyone that can fight.
Correct.
I do have a question, Ben, though. I'm trying to read through the Constitution while you guys talk. What part of the Constitution protects students in schools from being killed? What section would that be?
There's nothing.
How could you?
Well, I know there's nothing that's specific, but is it the purpose of our government to protect students in a public institution from being killed? Is there a correlation in the Constitution?
No, there isn't specifically, but we have several laws that are meant to do exactly that. So it's not a question of amending anything in the Constitution. If any child is harmed at a school, chances of laws being broken for that to happen, it's almost always. I mean, unless it's an accident of some sort. But if somebody goes into a school purposely to kill people, they've already broken several laws. So what kind of law could you even come up with that would actually stop somebody from exercising free will?
It's hard to say.
Well,
and then you would have to outlaw. You would have to make laws. You'd have to go to the Constitution. Does it outlaw people having knives? Does it allow someone having a bat? Does it outlaw someone drunk driving? Does it allow someone driving a car and just hitting someone? I've been hit twice by cars. To me, that's the bigger evil. Everyone I know has a family member dying or suffering with cancer from chemicals. Do we put something in the Constitution against chemicals? Your odds. By the way, what are the odds of being killed by an AR-15 in a high school? There are 300 to 500 deaths per year from assault weapons, as some people call them. We have 380 million Americans, so it's 1 out of a million, which means if you had Dodger Stadium, 50,000 people full, and you had 20 Dodger Stadiums full of people, and you had everyone exit, and you spend several days talking to people, and you go, you get a pass, you get a pass, you get a pass. You get to the last person after 20 stadiums of Dodger Stadium full. The last person you go, you're going to get it. You're going to get shot by an AR-15. That is what the odds are. Are we really that concerned about that kind of odds? Are we concerned about the 1 out of 4 people are going to die from cancer, and the other 1 out of 4 are going to die from heart attacks from the chemicals in our food, our water, the air we breathe? I think people are getting stampeded into just really, just a fear nation. It's manipulation. If you're talking about reality of what's dangerous, that's the big evil.
Yeah, I'm glad you're around after getting hit.
Albert, you can go.
No,
I agree with that. I agree with that. Big government, and the dirty policies and regulations that don't work, are killing more people than, 1,000 times over, or even 1,000,000 times over, I guess you could say, more than a gun could, but yet, like you said, one person or two people, they get killed by a gun, and it hits the mainstream media over and over again, and everybody's got to hear about it, and we got to change the rules and regulations about guns and stuff like that, and make more guns harder for, to get for the real Americans. Big pharma, and their medicines, and they're selling you a bunch of BS, I mean, there's
this. Let me ask this: human nature, and maybe we can agree on some things. Has human nature changed from day one? People are still the way they are. They will kill each other. They will manipulate. They will lie. If you go to a place where I work, where you're dealing with the retail public, just watch a line of people. Tell them it's going to be 5 minutes. We have to wait the systems down. Watch how people react. They fight. They want to argue. They're in each other's faces over just to buy a dollar item. The thing is, the reason we have our freedom is because people fought the government, and they took their weapons and they resisted government. If we can agree human nature doesn't change, that nations rise and nations fall, and that when they fall, it's going to be the revolution, military coup, or a foreign invader. Now, we live in a bubble the last 50 years, so people, when we talk about, private citizens shouldn't have guns, trust the government, we're talking about the bubble of America we live in. But if you look at world history, tell me if I'm wrong, whether it's Asian, Persian, Roman, Babylonian, British Empire, whatever, they will rise and they will fall. And when they fall, if you can't defend yourself against your government, against the revolution, against the coup, or against the foreign invader, you will be their slave. You will be their bitch. So the question is, do you want to disarm or have a society so regulated you can't resist your government? And
and then let me finish what I was saying real quick.
Go for it.
Because you like, let's just say in comparison, right? Basically, a big farmer kills 1 million people a day, and a gun, kill about one person a day, somewhere around there, right? And so you see thousands of people going out there protest about guns, right? But you don't see nobody out there outside, big pharma, protesting out there, So it's kind of a backward society, if you ask me.
Murder is not in the top 15 causes of death in the United States. I'll repeat that. Murder is not in the top 15 causes of death. And we're parading around kids as Armageddon has reared its head. The kids should be protesting violent movies, going to protest Truth or Dare movie, or Marvel, or the Avengers, or the Black Panther, or any of these movies where people are violent, getting killed, excessive violence. But we don't march against that. We march against the gun owners who can actually defend them. I would say, why not pass a law, outlaw the AR-15, and then deputize the kids to go and repossess those weapons using bats and knives? I think that exchange will take 20 seconds, which will prove my point. You wouldn't dare mess with a person who has that kind of weaponry, and that's the point of. That's why we should have that. Is that a government can't take us over. They will think twice before taking away our rights. And that's the history of China, Russia, Cuba, Iraq, any country, name it. Tell me if I'm wrong. Over the past 10,000 years of history, has not the people had to resist the powers that be? And tell me an exception to this with the major super world power.
I can tell you the hypocrisy that I've seen. People who are popular figures in our government, they can come out and give a public speech about how bad the AR-15s are and how we need to manipulate our Constitution to take those firearms off of the streets, the quote streets. But those are the same people who go behind closed doors and make weapons deals to arm certain rebels or certain towns wherever it's going to benefit them. And most of the weapons in the world are AK-47s. So everybody is involved in this. But then they turn around and totally two-face, come back home and try to disarm their own public.
Yeah, double standards.
Yep. And don't tell me we don't have a lot of Democrats who have armed rebel groups and profited off of it. This is not just Republicans.
We have the gun industry was one of the strongest industries in the world. But what John was saying about the mental incapacities of most people. That's the reason the interpretation of the Second Amendment is, I think, off. Maybe of the people that bear arms, but not everybody. And that's the problem. That's the problem with obtaining AR-15s for parents, and then their kids go out, and this is a new day, and the kids are impervious to death with all the death they see around them, the video games that you die and then you come back to life. In a world where the kids don't understand the difference between responsibility and just what reality is. And that's our problem with the constitutional interpretation of the Second Amendment, in my opinion.
So it's legal for a kid to have a gun?
No, well, I mean, right now it's legal for them to have it at 18. But most kids don't have guns. They have them. They have access to their parents' guns freely.
Okay, so you said a kid could have a gun. An 18-year-old is an adult. So you're calling an adult a kid, or I'm not sure.
Yeah, no. If a kid can put his life on the line in the military, then he can have a gun at 18. I don't have a problem with that. My problem is that everybody doesn't need a gun. I do understand the protection of the borders of our people, et cetera, but that doesn't mean that everybody is skilled enough to take on those responsibilities of defending themselves by being armed.
Right, and Parkland was about a kid who had 40 police calls, at a minimum over 20. Do you know anyone that has more than one or two police calls? Someone who posts on social media that they're going to do something violent, someone who tells someone they're going to kill, someone and it's on medications. And that's where I think the rules and the safeguards are already in place. They could tighten it up, but the point is the AR-15 isn't an issue. It's sick people on meds that are getting access to these that they should clamp down on.
Exactly. I personally, I don't mind AR-15s with $20 bump stocks and every ornament that you can put on the thing. It's all girly to me, because when you're a man or a woman who knows how to defend themselves, they don't necessarily need a gun. You use it. You use yourself. You use yourself as
no. Only if you're going to be a human shield. That is not taken into account most circumstances of being mugged or robbed or burglaries or carjackings. You're not going to defend yourself against 5 dudes with handheld weapons. Right. You're going to get stabbed or shot or beat up, and there's nothing you're going to do about it.
And you can't defend yourself against 5 people even if you have a gun. You might be.
That's
able to
not
take
true.
Out
I mean, you know how loud they are?
Oh, very much so. Yep. And you might be able to take out 1 or 2, but you can't take out all 5. So
how many people do you know that would hear a gunshot and keep running towards where it came from? Just for a car or a wallet?
Not very many. But
that's my point. So you don't need to have a gun to kill somebody, but it might save your life having one.
I mean, that's
my point.
There is a point there. I don't deny it. The thing is that I think that the cultures can change, and if we are more, and I mentioned this before, more loving, understanding, empathetic culture, society for all people who breathe, then we can pretty much live, I think, a happier, more stress-free, ergo less medical problems life, and we can be happy. We can be the people that we want to be. We don't need to. I had a client, a writer, who is Russian, and he was so sad to see that Russia and everyone else in the world was so gun happy. That was, I can't say it was surprising to me, but it was refreshing to know that even people, from other countries other than Mexico or Honduras are fleeing their countries because of the improprieties of what they're doing, the countries are doing, the government.
But general disarmament usually comes from the most authoritarian people. Most of the people who enjoy their Second Amendment don't try to take others' rights from them. They just want to be left alone. But I see a lot of people who would take away the Second Amendment who are authoritarian. They want to take power where they see power and replace it with their version of power. And the other problem with that is that I hear a lot of talk about this being a democracy, and even things you want to do, Don, to make it easier, more streamlined, to get your agendas through. Just keep in mind, the closer to a democracy we become, the chances go up for having that flipped and turned against you. So right now, the majority, if the majority gets their way, that could turn towards the other direction, and you could be outnumbered in a democracy. Then you'd be the one saying this is tyranny.
Right. No, I understand exactly what you're saying. I've worked in the community and as a lobbyist just to try to minimize things, ameliorate both parties, to make sure that we continue on a stream of conversation and bipartisan activity that will be beneficial for society.
I got a question.
That's why I work
you guys, Albert.
I do understand what
you're saying. We only have. Stop, please.
Yeah.
We only have 13 minutes of this. Okay, I have to talk now. We only have 13 minutes of this episode left. I scheduled another show at 10 p.m. your guys' time. So John won't be calling in, but the rest of you can. So continue your discussion. Will be cut off in 12 minutes.
All right, go ahead, John.
Here's my quick question. Okay, how can gun deaths are counted, but gun saving people are not counted? Like when you use a gun to save somebody, it's not counted, and when guns kill people, that goes on the record. So why is that?
Because if you're talking about gun deaths, actually they are counted. It is hard to separate those because they treat the circumstances where somebody was forced to take someone down.
I'm talking about when you use a gun. Let's just say if you get attacked by a bear, right? And you shoot the bear and you save somebody's life, right? That's not. And the police gets there and you're like, oh, he was a bear attack. Does the police write a report? Oh, a bear attacked him and he shot the bear and he saved that guy's life. He's not going to write that in a report, and that's not going to go on record. So the only thing is gun deaths get counted, but gun saving people, that doesn't get counted on record. So we don't have an actual number for that. So there could be more guns saving more people than we actually know, but we'll never find out because that kind of stuff doesn't get counted.
Right, unless there is a gun death. Even in any situation, it gets recorded.
But sometimes you go to the store and you see a security guy and he has a gun, or you see a armored truck and a guy jumps out, big strapping guy, he's packing, and you think to yourself, most people are like, whoa, I'm going to take a step back, like I'm not going to mess with this guy, and it's called presence. It's like they'll send a person armed just to stand as a display to say, if you're going to try something, don't even think about it. So, you can't keep track of how much it discourages crime, but they do know that crimes go down when there's police presence. So that's come they send cop cars, or they'll park a cop car at a corner. It discourages, and then if there's nothing there, if it's a dark alley, there's going to be more criminal activity. But the question is, people are so concerned, and I agree. I think it's traumatic. Kids should go to school safely. They shouldn't be traumatized. But how much more are people be traumatized if they don't have weapons to defend themselves? And we talked about the need for it. Well, American Revolution. We certainly would have needed, if we had today's technology, we would have needed an AR-15 then. Civil War would have needed it. What about the Wild Wild West? Would have needed it. What about when Rodney King riots were breaking out and other events like that? What if the Japanese had kept flying past Pearl Harbor and landed in California? Would have needed an AR-15. I don't have it. I don't pack. I believe in God, love, and Happy Easter Jesus. But the point is, I can only have this cool, free, easy breezy lifestyle because someone grabbed a gun and resisted government.
That's true. And I guess back to my point about arming our government, arming people that we don't even know about. I don't know if you guys have seen that movie Lord of War with Nicolas Cage.
No.
Well, he's an arms dealer, and it was brought up in the movie was his job was so important that he had agents watching him on every deal, and he had different passports. He had to paint different ships or airplanes with different numbers and names, and he was just moving guns from here to there all over the world. And these agents kept watching him, and every time they put him in handcuffs, he said, "What's going to happen is I'm going to be let out. My job is so important because politicians can't be seen doing what I'm doing." But he's doing the work of the politicians. So why would they choose to arm rebels or a town with a certain type of weapon, like the AK?
Right, and because it also
has a purpose.
It keeps us from going to Iraq being basically tar and feathered. So it's better to hand the weapons to other people, let them do the dirty work. It's their own people, it's their own homeland. They can do that. On parallel thought, Gangs of New York with Leonardo DiCaprio. And we saw what happened when the people didn't have firepower and the government actually would cannonball, a town and shoot up people, and that's not publicized. We started out with the case of with the police shooting and with Alton Sterling, and it's interesting that we talk half of the facts, but we don't talk the whole facts. The police were responding because they were called because someone had said that there was a gun and that this person was there, and so there's someone selling CDs and DVDs in front of a convenience store. You think about that. It'd be like someone hanging out in front of my place or Dawn in front of your house and hanging out and selling stuff. You go, "Hey, this is my property. Get off of my property. What are you doing?" "Well, I'm just selling stuff." It's like, "Oh, it doesn't matter." It's like, go elsewhere. So he's on some other, person's property. And usually people, the majority of the time, they're not selling CDs and DVDs. They're running drug deals. And when he showed up, he didn't put his hands on the car when he was told. So police wrestle with him, and they don't know what he has. Maybe, it turns out he was a felon who with firearms. So, but they don't know that. He could have been a Jehovah's Witness. So the point is, when you tell a story and you tell half the facts, it's a lie. You're not telling the whole thing. Like as a cop going in that situation,
John?
I'd be pooping my pants.
Okay, the problem was I think part of the problem was the assumption, because the 911 caller, okay, this was a heavy-set black guy, Alton Sterling. He stuck his hands in his pants like to itch his belly, and the 911 caller said he had a gun. So when the cops showed up, they already assumed he had a gun, but the store owner said he never carries a gun. He's a peaceful guy. He just sells CDs. So you live in L.A., John. You see people all over the place in downtown L.A., especially selling bootleg DVDs and all this stuff. Not all of them are potential criminals or hidden drug dealers.
To your point,
Go ahead.
Half of those people we don't know, because I see them all the day long. They're high on things. They go in, they get cough syrup, and they mix it with some pills, and then they get some alcohol, and then they're flying high. They're loopy. They're talking to themselves, and then you're going to go off of a store owner says he's a cool dude. It's all right. When you have a call saying that he had a gun, and he is a big guy, so he's not a little kid like a 5-year-old kid going, "Oh, are you lost? You need your parents." So you can't assume that as a cop you'll be dead. Does that make sense?
But if you're a community police officer. If you're a community police officer and you know the neighborhood and you're a local and you know the neighborhood, you know this guy. He doesn't have a lot of money. He's selling CDs because he's poor, and everyone in the community knows him. And I think the cops they didn't assess it.
That is a false assumption. When a cop responds and comes to your house, what do? They say, we want everyone out of the house. I want to see your hands. They identify, they assess the situation, right? They control the crime scene or possible situation. And then once they've assessed everything, like you are cool, your ID checks out, we called in, then they go, oh, guess what? You know, a cup of coffee, sure, go ahead, sit down, do whatever you want. But until that's established, and notice if the store owner said, oh, yeah, he's a cool dude, he's fine, then why did he resist the cops? Why did he not put his hands on the car and say, I got nothing to hide?
He didn't know what was going on.
He doesn't know when a police officer shows up that you're supposed to follow his instructions? Are you serious?
You know what? He was a loc. I'm not going to put him in a slant that's negative, but he wasn't the brightest bulb on the tree, and
right.
He was thrown off guard. He didn't know what the hell was going on, and he felt threatened.
That gives him the liability to not follow orders or to show his hands and follow instructions because he's confused.
Well, he didn't have an opportunity to show his hands. They just confronted him in his dark grandma's backyard. But he shouldn't have, No,
we're talking about Alton Sterling in Baton Rouge, not Stephon Clark.
I'm looking at the picture. There's a car in a parking lot with lights, and they're wrestling him on the ground. How does it get to that point? How do you not know when a cop comes up to you?
Because he was pissed off, okay?
Okay, but what do you do when a cop?
Maybe he had a bad experience with the police.
And when you don't do what a cop says, then what do you think is going to happen? When they think their life is at risk, and other people's, what are they going to do? Well, just go take their word for it. In fact, let them do whatever they want, and they can put their hands in their pockets and pull out a gun and shoot me. And boy, I'm a dumbass.